I think something to say in terms of for the supply chain is where the low-emission vehicle side of things is very disruptive to the existing sort of the development of vehicles in the UK and the supply chains. I think the connected and autonomous piece has the opportunity or the potential to completely flip the way in which the supply chain in the UK reacts and how it develops and builds vehicles. So the way that we work at Innovate UK, so we've got the EPSRC, which looks at sort of fundamental research and universities and things like that supporting there. We look at innovation at TRL levels 3 to 6 approximately, and the idea would be that we take something from a university startup through the sort of the valley of death, as we might call it, through over to sort of commercialization, which is where the Advanced Propulsion Centre comes in and takes things through into the supply chain. So today I'm going to talk to you about three things. So first of all, building vehicles and the sustainability in the supply chain there, looking at the supply chain, and then looking at the customers and what we could expect into the future. So touched on already this idea of the circular economy. I think, so whether it's a low-emission vehicle or any type of vehicle, fundamentally there are some CO2 intensive practices throughout the production of any vehicle. That's a given. Certainly at the moment, you've got mining, you've got shipping, you've got various other component parts of producing a vehicle that are carbon intensive. There are things that are happening at the moment around the circular economy that should be reducing that carbon intensity. And I don't want to steal the thunder of some of my colleagues coming up, but I'll talk a bit about it. It was announced the other day that the e-tron, the new Audi, is going to be built in a factory in Belgium that is carbon neutral. It's probably doing a lot of carbon offsetting. Whether or not it's carbon neutral, I don't know how you define it, but certainly there's ambition there, there's a push there, and there's some interesting things happening. Some things that are going on in the UK. So, for example, within the Faraday Battery Challenge, we've got ways in which we're looking at producing batteries that have less of those rare earth metals in them. Looking at ways of producing them that deal with some of the security supply issues we have, so trying to remove some of those components which are maybe more difficult to source from the battery in the first place. And also looking at recyclability as it's being produced, so making sure that at the end of it, this battery's life, it is able to be recycled. So it's built like that. And if you, again, in the news recently, BYD announced that they would be setting up their first battery recycling plant in Shanghai. And you can see that type of thing coming through. So this idea of the circular economy, this idea of what's being produced, thinking about the end of life as you're producing it, is very important. As well as that, again, as was mentioned in the last one, about mining the things that have come to the end of their life and understanding how you can extract the materials from there. There's work going on in the UK around extracting rare earth metals from end-of-life magnets, and I didn't realise that presentation was going on beforehand, so I won't dwell on that any longer. I think the main thing to say from the building of vehicles is that there's a big opportunity here. So low-emission vehicles, ultra-low-emission vehicles are disruptive. We're going to be building a new supply chain in the next few years. So there's a real opportunity here to build that supply chain with the circular economy in mind. And it's something that is happening, I think. The next one is about supply chain. So what the universities and whatnot are doing, they're looking at innovation that's going to probably make it into a vehicle in 10, 15, 20 years' time, perhaps. At Innovate UK, we're looking to support innovation that's going to come through and end up in a vehicle that you might buy in the mid-2020s, for example. So the decisions for many of the vehicles that will be produced into the early 2020s have already been made. So those vehicles, the idea how they're going to be produced, their supply chains have been settled. So what we can influence at Innovate UK in terms of what we fund is vehicles that are going to be entering the market in the mid-2020s and onwards. So for that reason, Innovate UK has made a decision to not fund innovation in the internal combustion engine. So lightweighting, powertrains, so motors, power electronics, batteries, charging, all of that is, and hydrogen as well, all of that is okay to be funded, but internal combustion engine is no longer funded by us. I think that points the supply chain in the right direction and shows that, you know, in the long term, the ICE does not have a future. Although it has a very necessary future in potentially in the short term, which is why, for example, the APC do still fund innovation in that area. So I think, well, so the next question is, I'm sure a lot of people in this room, as soon as that number went up, they knew exactly what I was referring to. Can I just have a show of hands? Who knows what that number refers to? Right. So if that picture in the middle is a big clue, who now thinks they know what that number might be referring to? So in the UK, we produce about 2.4 million engines a year. And the question then comes is to what do we replace that with? Where's the value? And that's what I want to talk about on the next slide. So what is it the UK wants to be a world leader in? What's our supply chain look like in 2030? Where's the value? So the customer ultimately is the one that's going to decide that. So I mean, customers are not rational. They buy Audis over Skodas. They're the same vehicle. So customers are not rational. So they don't make these rational decisions that I think often people think they make. Fleet buyers, they are rational. So think about that for a moment. So 30 years ago, what did you want from a vehicle? You wanted it to be reliable. You wanted it to be fast, perhaps. You wanted it to be safe. You probably wanted it to be red. You wanted to go fast, a stripe down the side of it. I mean, my dad, in 92, 93, he brought home his first newly purchased car. It had go fast stripes on the side. It sat on the driveway. He washed it every weekend. It was an extension of himself. It was a way of him showing to the world that he had made it. I don't have that. I don't care what vehicle I drive. It's more important to me that I've got a better bike than my neighbour. I live in East London. And so there's this change is occurring where people are less interested in what vehicle they drive. I think, so in 30 years' time, what is it that people are going to want? What is it they're going to desire from a vehicle? I think it's going to be very different to now. There's other ways of projecting yourself. The vehicle is going to be less of a core component of your life. So I'm talking specifically about things like mobility as a service, connected autonomous vehicles, people increasingly procuring their vehicles through lease agreements and these types of things. That opens a door up for fleet buyers that are much more sensible in terms of how they're willing to spend their money. The drivers for why they'll spend their money are very different. So if you're thinking about a fleet buyer, they want something that's going to last forever. Planned obsolescence is no longer a thing. They want something that's modular, scalable. They want something that's repairable very easily. They want someone in a backpack to be able to go out and fix this mobility as a service machine, whatever it is. So that has real opportunities for the supply chain. So when we're thinking, and sustainability within the supply chain, you're thinking about building something once. You're not thinking about selling a vehicle every 2 or 3 years. So that takes us back to this question. What does the UK want to be a leader in? Do we want to replace that 2.4 million engines with 2.4 million electric motors? I don't know. Maybe we do, but I don't know. I think that's an open question. I think fundamentally, I think I need to finish now, but fundamentally there's a lot of opportunities there to make a far more sustainable supply chain. First of all, as the ULEV disruption comes in, and secondly, potentially more fundamental is when the connected autonomous vehicle disruption comes in the coming years. So thank you.